Hello sexy. Today I've decided to get involved in something that YouTube's been doing for a little while. It's called Project for Awesome. The first charity that I would like to support on my first ever Project for Awesome is a charity called Focus 12. Focus 12 is a charity that helps with drug addiction and alcohol addiction and any kind of addiction in that sense, really. Obviously, I think all charity is good and I'd like to support them all, but the one that really I think gets to me the most and makes me feel the most passionate is drug addiction and fighting it, because it is a real disease and I feel like it's incredibly misunderstood by the majority of people out there, and that makes me feel really sad. A drug addict doesn't choose to become a drug addict. They don't choose that life. Nobody would choose that life. It is thrust upon them by whatever demons they've got inside them, and addiction is a disease that you have to try and cure. It isn't a choice, and that is the main point that I'd like to make in this video. Drug addiction doesn't just affect the individual, it affects their whole family, their children, their parents, their friends are all left devastated by one person's addiction. And Focus 12 are doing amazing work to try and stop that from happening. They provide help and counselling for the family of the addict as well as the addict themselves. One of the biggest plus points of Focus 12 is they don't believe in methadone. They don't believe in any substitute for any drug. They go by the rule that you have to get off drugs and alcohol completely. No substitute for any of them, just completely off the drugs, because that is the only way that somebody can be fully clean and fully cured from their addiction. Even once they're clean, they're still an addict. That doesn't mean it just stops there. Their whole life is about fighting that urge to do more drugs or have another drink. It never stops, ever. Until the day they die, they will be absolutely crying out for whatever it was they were addicted to. It's a horrible disease, and I hate how it's so misunderstood. A drug addict isn't a bad person. Sure, it can make people do bad things, it can make them steal, it can make them hurt people, but that's not the real person. The real person is in there, they want to stop. And Focus 12 do such amazing work to help that happen. They've got a pretty good website, I'm going to put it down there in the description. It's focus12.co.uk. On there they've got a page where you can donate, and any amount of money really helps. I know we're all pretty poor, and I know most of you are going to be like, nah mate, I'm going to buy myself a McDonald's rather than give some money to charity. That's kind of how I feel, but I mean, at some point I really would love to donate some money, because I genuinely feel in my heart that Focus 12 are one of the greatest charity organisations. As you can imagine, it's really expensive to run the programmes that they get the addicts on, and the money just goes towards keeping those costs down, because drug addicts can't really afford the care that they need. It costs money, and there's no way of getting around that. And drug addicts don't usually have much money because it's all been spent on drugs. So the only way that these fees can ever go down is with help from the public and with help from donations. And I think that's a pretty good place for the money to go. I was pretty close to a drug addict once. He was almost like a kind of adopted brother of mine. He was a really good person. He was full of love and respect, and he had values and morals, and a lot of the time those were very misguided. And I'm not saying by any means that he was a perfect person, but I can assure you he wasn't a bad person or a nasty person. And I saw him addicted to drugs, and I saw what it did. One day he'd just be fine. We'd be playing about, we'd be messing around, we'd be having a laugh. And then the next day he'd arrive at the house and he'd have these bloodshot eyes, and he'd just be a totally different person. And that's when I noticed what drugs can do to people, and that's when I went, no, don't much like those. Bit rubbish, if anything. And that person is no longer with us. It wasn't an overdose or anything that killed him. It was something completely different that was, I feel, very much caused by the lifestyle that he led, which I feel is very much influenced by drugs. So ultimately, I do believe that drugs killed him. And I think that can happen in many situations. The drugs might not be the ultimate thing that kills them, but it's the thing that leads them onto a destructive path that will put them in harm's way. And I love Focus 12 for trying to help. I think they're such an amazing organisation that They ignore a lot of doctors that say methadone is the answer because they know best, and I think they're great. If you want to know more about Focus 12, I suggest looking up Russell Brand's documentary about drug addiction. He tells you a lot about Focus 12 there, because they are the organisation that helped him get clean, and I just think it's great. So if you want more information, go and watch that. If I have already done enough, below is the link, and you can go there and donate. Or if you can't afford it, just go there and read about the work they do and clue yourself up and become aware, because awareness is always important. And please just double think about your feelings on drug addiction and drug addicts in general. Ignorance doesn't help anyone.